I asked myself what video I should make next, and I said, Jill, the world could always use more joy, so why not Ever After? For those of you unfamiliar, Ever After, A Cinderella Story, is a 1998 film starring Drew Barrymore, which is a kind of no magic Cinderella retelling set in, I think, 16th century France. When it came out, it was praised by critics for its fresh and grounded take on fairy tales, and it is 100% a comfort watch. If you have seen it more than once, feel free to quote the lines along with the characters.
Yes, I shall go down in history as the man who opened a door.
The fact that it does, in fact, feature a strong female lead means you can probably lay some of the blame for the increasingly bad girl power movies that we got at its door, but it's a good film, and she's a great character, so not that much of the blame. Ever After could have been an easy cash grab kind of movie, but it is made with so much love and care and sincerity that it remains a film that people really love, even now. 26 years later. No, I can't do maths. 28 years later. Ha! It's fine. We're fine. Even 28 years later, people are like, oh man, you're doing a review of Ever After. I love that film. Briefly, I think that it remains so popular because of that love and joy and sincerity and care that they put into it, and also because it's so well written and very well structured, and also because it's perfectly cast. I mean, Angelica Houston, in particular, just makes every line a winner.
Fine. Go catch a ticket.
So since we're going to spoil the heck out of this movie, maybe if you haven't seen it, you might want to go watch it first. So if you would like a no magic Cinderella retelling where they gave the role of the fairy godmother to Leonardo da Vinci, no, I'm not kidding, maybe you would enjoy it. It has gorgeous locations and beautiful costumes and actual characters and maybe even some sword fights. I know some of you are kind of here for the sword fights. There aren't a lot of swords in this movie, but there are a few. We just won't be talking about them a lot because they're, you know, they're kind of there in a functional role, as it were. Jill, what even is this video? Think of it like old school stuff you like, but more in keeping with the modern algorithm, which basically means I'm going to talk as much as I want, and if you want to, you are free to come along for the ride. I should say right off the bat that Ever After is a movie which has some things in it which would normally make me go, like Drew Barrymore's accent. For example, when I first watched the movie, I found her accent a little bit odd, but I was a kid and I lived in Northern Ireland, so what did I know? However, I am now an adult and I have spent several years living in Kent, where a minority of people do in fact have the kind of accent that Drew Barrymore is going for here. The actual Kent accent is basically like if you take something from The Only Way is Essex and kind of sand the edges off it to make it slightly more rural sounding. That's basically where you are. But as a grown-up who has spent a large amount of time listening to people who have the natural version of
"A servant is not a thief, your highness, and those who are cannot help themselves,"
that, the naturalism of the accent tends to fade in and out a little bit. And yet, her performance is just captivating in its sincerity. I wonder if the accents were part of the problem with Murder at the Embassy, because everyone was trying to do those slightly constrained 1930s style posh accents, and it does limit you a little bit if you're not used to it. The Patreon version of this video, which you can watch if you have a Patreon membership, you don't have to pay for it, you do have to give them your email address, but you can watch it on Patreon. It contains an extended rant about all of the 2025 movies I've actually seen, of which there were 3.3, and one of the movies I watched in its entirety was Murder at the Embassy, which was not very good. But anyway, if you want to listen to that, there will be a link in the pinned comment. If not, let us continue. Everyone is so perfectly cast that you don't think about the acting. Even when I went in to watch things to think about the acting, I kept just getting sucked in by the performances. And while Danielle is one of those characters who is in a historical context with surprisingly modern attitudes, in this case it actually makes sense because the thing she has formed her entire personality around after her father died when she was 8 is Thomas More's Utopia. And this was an inspired choice, honestly, because while Utopia is somewhat satirical in its presentation of the ideal country, anyone who campaigns for public office becomes disqualified for holding any office at all. It's also both very sincere and very funny, so it fits in with the tone of the film quite well. Instead of inflicting these horrible punishments, it would be far more to the point to provide everyone with some means of livelihood, so that nobody is under the frightful necessity of becoming first a thief and then a corpse. These translated quotes from Utopia are your culture for the day. You're welcome. Regardless, as I said, Ever After 28 years later is still very well loved because it is made with such sincerity that you overlook its flaws. Willingly. It's a movie that's really trying to give you a good experience. It really wants you to know that we can work together and understand each other and come together across classes and have beautiful costumes, and also there will be smooching. Because it is part of that late 90s, early 2000s girl power era of films, it does also have 2 instances of the princess saving herself. Also, technically, she's not a princess, but that's not really the point. However, neither of them feel stupid or nonsensical or like they're a gotcha stupid boys kind of moment. It is, and I can't believe that I have to say this as a positive point because you'd think it would be a given, a movie that actually likes all of its main characters. Also, the ending is just a cascading series of awesomeness.
Marguerite, I don't believe you've met my wife.
If you have read my book, Just Stab Me Now, or even if you have only seen the YouTube series on which the book is based, now you may know where one of those moments near the end comes from. We could pretend that I don't wear my influences on my sleeve and that it's all Caroline, but either way, now you know. This episode is sponsored by me, I guess, and if you want you can buy my book, or join my Patreon, or you can just subscribe. That's free. Anyway, Marguerite, I don't believe you've met my wife, and
Of course not, Mother. I'm only here for the food.
live, as the kids probably no longer say, rent-free in my head. So since I'm basically going to be summarizing the entire plot, we're not going to do a plot, it goeth thusly. We're just going to jump straight in with my first favorite thing about it, which is the script. Because this is my video, and no one is making you watch it. But I'm glad you're here. Not only is the script very funny, it's also very well structured. And as an example of this, let me tell you how the introduction goes. The first 3 minutes are the framing device, the brothers Grimm talking to a grande dame about their stories and her revealing that Cinderella and her glass slipper were real.
Her name was Danielle de Barbarac. And this was a glass slipper.
Okay, from about the 3-minute mark to the 4.5-minute mark, we have some credits and some nice scenery as Danielle's dad returns home, followed by a carriage. And then we meet the child Danielle, preparing to meet her stepmother and stepsisters for the first time. She's very excited, but not excited enough not to run off and dunk her friend in the mud. We meet the father, and then right around the 6-minute mark, we meet Marguerite, Jacqueline, and indeed, the Baroness. Danielle is now muddy from head to foot, but nonetheless, they are all politely introduced.
Hello, Danielle. At last we meet. Your father speaks of nothing else.
So polite, so appropriate, such layers of meaning, such 1990s eyebrows, but I forgive you, because I don't have a reason, I just do. Right around 7.5 minutes, Danielle is presented with Utopia and finds out her father needs to go away again in a fortnight, and plays rock, paper, scissors. At 9 minutes, he's leaving.
I'm counting on you to teach them the ropes around here. The Baroness isn't used to getting her hands dirty.
I mean, look at her dress. Could you imagine? Again, we're doing so much work to set up what's coming.
Wait! It's tradition. He always waves at the gate.
Rudmilla does not care, though. Thank you. But at 10 minutes in, Danielle's dad has a heart attack, and this bit is masterfully done. And Auguste's last words are to his daughter, and not his wife. And, oh man, the pain. The pain of it? The pain. Oh. And then we get a last little voiceover from the grande dame, and we skip forward 10 years. This introduction, man, we get the dad, the stepmother, the stepsisters, we get Thomas More's Utopia, we get rock, paper, scissors, we get Gustave. Some of these are major things and some of them are minor details, but we set them all up right here. And all of it goes past seamlessly as we then slide into the present day of the film and Prince Henry running away. Or to be more precise about it, Prince Henry and Danielle meet because he's running away, and then owing to his actions when they meet again with her disguised as a noblewoman, and then they start to fall in love. We're going to talk about the many excellent lines in the script, but equally important is the characterization and the structure. And you would think, well, of course it's well structured, it's based on a fairy tale, but a lot of the structure does not rely on the bones of the fairy tale. Equally important though is the characterization. I told you that this video was going to be all over the place, so let us start with Henry. I think something quite important about Ever After is how much care they took in making Henry a real person. He is kind of an entitled man-child to begin with, but you can see underneath that he has some good qualities, and you can also see that he is sharp. He is Danielle's intellectual equal, and that is going to be really important. I wanted to say that their banter is really good, but I guess banter has some connotations now of, Marvel-style quipping, and that's not quite what I mean, because they contend with each other on a semi-regular basis, but they are seeking to be understood and to convince, rather than trying to get one up over the other, if you see what I mean. And when I say that you can see from the get-go that Henry has good qualities, at 14 minutes in we get the meet cute, by which I mean Danielle shies an apple directly into his face while he's stealing her father's horse. Given the relative velocities of the bodies involved, it's no wonder he falls off.
Forgive me, Your Highness, I did not see you.
Your aim would suggest otherwise.
See, that was funny. That was funny. I like you.
And for that I know I must die.
Then speak of this to no one, and I shall be lenient. For your silence.
And now I definitely like you. Everything that happens with their relationship, the whole fact that Danielle is able to dress up as a courtier, is because of this moment of generosity from Henry. He could have bullied her into silence, because, she's just one of the everyday rustics. She can't gainsay him, he's the prince. But he doesn't, because when he thinks about it, there is a fundamental kindness in Henry. I mean, the whole reason that he gets caught and has to go back to the palace is because he goes and chases down the thief who steals the Mona Lisa. And speaking of chasing down the Mona Lisa, I love how very nearly everything in this film follows logically from the things that came before. The reason that Danielle and Henry meet in the first place is that Henry is running away to avoid getting married to the Princess of Spain. But his horse goes lame, and so he's just like, well, I'll just take this random one here. It's Danielle's father's horse, so she's not happy about that, so she knocks him down, so he pays her off, so she dresses up and goes and redeems Maurice, and he, having rescued the Mona Lisa, is now back in the palace to see her when she does that. And the only reason she's able to redeem Maurice and set him free is that Henry is there. Some of you are thinking, this movie makes logical sense, is really quite faint praise, Jill. But listen, actually, no, I'm not even going to say it. You know the kind of film that I'm talking about. You have an example in your head right now of a film where things just happen, and why? What leads from one event to another? I'm just saying, nearly everything in this movie follows logically from the things that came before. To go back to characterization, because that is where we started, I also like how they characterize the stepmother and the stepsisters. And again, in the introduction, you get an excellent setup for Rodmilla's character from the very first scene that she appears in. She thinks very highly of herself, she's very polite without necessarily being kind, and she is genuinely devastated by Auguste dying. And the fact that she is devastated by Auguste dying is the main thing that humanizes her.
You cannot leave me here!
A wonderful scene later on in the film is when she's talking to Danielle, and Danielle asks, "Did you love my father?" And Rodmilla says, "Well, I barely knew him." And that could have been a dismissal, but the way she says it, because Angelica Houston, tells us that probably the answer is yes. Probably the answer is yes, and she is still on some level devastated that he died, which just makes her rejection of Danielle even more painful. But before we get there, we see hints of Rodmilla's internal tug of war at the breakfast scene, where she stops Danielle and looks her up and down and wants her to improve, wants her to be better, but is still making her serve her stepsisters rather than sit at the table and be a member of the family. The breakfast scene also contains many, many banger lines, including,
"Jacqueline, dear, do not speak unless you can improve the silence. Darling, nothing is final until you're dead. And even then, I'm sure God negotiates."
I swear I will not be clipping every single line this woman speaks, but most of them are just so good.
Some people read because they cannot think for themselves.
Anyway, I have a Utopia quote to counter that last one. "Most people know nothing about learning. Many despise it. Dummies reject as too hard whatever is not dumb." This initial scene with all the family members together also gives us an insight into Marguerite.
Why don't you sleep with the pigs, Cindersoot, if you insist on smelling like one?
And she's genuinely vicious. Jury's still out on Jacqueline in this opening scene, but Marguerite is a piece of work. It's just so satisfyingly clean. The writing, I mean, because when Danielle is being a servant, she is also satisfyingly dirty, but we'll talk about that later, maybe. The writing is so good, and Ever After introduces all of its conflicts so seamlessly that when I was trying to do a summary of the introduction, I couldn't find a good place to stop, because every time we went on to a new scene, it was introducing something else which was going to be useful later, but it seemed like that would be a bad thing to do, because then we'd just be summarizing half of the movie. That's still kind of what we're doing, but never mind. Technically speaking, the plot has already kicked off at this point, but I would like to just mention this scene where Rodmilla goes shopping and Danielle talks about Rodmilla's financial incontinence and the cunning plan, just because it contains this line.
The shoes are too big.
Nobody will be looking at your feet.
Oh yeah, we'll get there, friends. Let us continue talking about the characterization of Rodmilla and Marguerite and Jacqueline, because later on, when Henry returns the horse, we get the pair of them clattering down the stairs, and the introduction of one and then the other.
Your Highness, may I present Marguerite Françoise Louise of the House of Ghent. And Jacqueline.
We already had a hint that Marguerite is favoured over Jacqueline, but this kind of solidifies it for us. And isn't it funny that Rodmilla's favourite daughter is the one that looks least like her? We also get this exchange, which is a personal favourite.
I'm afraid I might have scared the wits out of one of your servants, a young lady with quite a good arm, actually.
She is mute, my lord.
Really? She spoke quite forcefully.
Well, it comes and goes.
But what can I say? Every line is a winner. Anyway, let us go back a second to Danielle. She has just dressed up as a noblewoman so she can go and redeem Maurice, one of the servants in her household, because the Baroness sold him to pay off the debts. I used to own a gold snood with fake pearls in it, like that one, because I really loved this movie, and also I love that hairstyle. Unfortunately, it went with absolutely nothing else that I owned. The detail that I told you we'd come back to is that Leonardo da Vinci notices that she's wearing boots, but nobody else does. But the thing I actually want to draw attention to in this scene, my favourite thing about it, is the blocking. And that seems a really strange thing to praise a scene for, but it's really good, so come with me on a journey. Aimless walking can be a bit of a problem. If you look at the Star Wars prequels, for example, there's a lot of really beautiful sets which they're blue screened into, but they're just kind of wandering around them for reasons. And in Ever After, we are, of course, on several real and very beautiful locations, and that does help, but we also have a clear objective that's going on here. Everyone is moving the way they do for a reason, and the movement underlines the emotional beats. The thing is, Danielle has got what she wanted. Maurice is free, and he's going to meet her at the bridge. But now, she has intrigued the prince, and this is a bit of a problem for her, because if she's caught, and they find out that she's not a noblewoman, that's 5 days in the stocks, or possibly, if he figures out that she's the one who shied an apple into his face this morning, he could well execute her. You know, so she's got to get out of here, but politely. So she's walking away, but Henry, intrigued, is following her. And he's sometimes cutting in front of her and walking backwards, but she doesn't really stop. She only pauses briefly a couple of times and keeps going until...
For anyone who can quote Thomas More is well worth the effort.
And of all the things that he could have said to get her to stop, "Be still my heart, the prince has read Utopia."
I found it sentimental and dull. I confess the plight of the everyday rustic bores me.
Oh. Never mind. And so she starts walking again until he physically stands in front of her to get her opinion of him.
Not.
Am I to understand that you find me arrogant?
And again to beg for her name, because who would deny the prince anything? And yet she is, not out of coyness, but out of self-preservation.
I fear that the only name to leave you with is Comtesse Nicole de Lancret.
Which is her mother's name, albeit with an extra title, but since Maurice just said to her,
I thought I was looking at your mother.
This is where we are, this is what we're thinking about. She's under pressure in this moment to think of a name, and so this works really well. And then she's out of there. And we then have the reunion scene with Maurice and the other servants, which contrasts with the king and the prince at loggerheads, which includes the line,
You shipped me to the Americas like some criminal.
he's thinking about the things that Danielle said to him. I would show you this whole scene because...
Francis, sit down before you have a stroke.
That's so anachronistic, but it's so funny that I don't care, and this one as well.
I will simply deny you the crown and live forever.
I just love. But we would be here a long time because basically every scene has a great line in it. I mean, the next scene where Rodmilla is talking to Danielle about the horse being returned and the prince and things has the line,
Fine. Go catch a chicken.
and then the next scene is the prince talking to his mother because he's your son is the last line spoken in the previous scene with Henry in it. You see how everything kind of fits together? And here comes the bargain. You want love, find it in the next 5 days before the mask and announce it then, or marry the Princess of Spain.
Choose wisely, Henry. Divorce is only something they do in England.
So there's going to be a mask and Rodmilla is doing some plotting and Danielle is still thinking about the prince, and we introduce the upcoming conflict about Danielle's mother's dress and shoes, and we also reinforce the fact that Jacqueline, unlike her mother and sister, is not a cast iron B-word. Once upon a time I did a review of Captain America, or possibly one of the sequels, and it was around the time that people were talking a lot about toxic masculinity, and I said the thing was, if you were talking about toxic masculinity, fine, but if you wanted a good example of positive, healthy masculinity, then you could do worse than to look at Steve Rogers. He's strong, he's brave, he's a leader, he's courageous, he does all of the good things, but also he has friends and relationships and he treats people well and, you know, he feels things. Aragorn would be another really good example of this, but also maybe just all of the main male characters in Lord of the Rings who aren't obvious baddies. I'm just saying, those guys fought and led and were led and, you know, cried when things were sad and celebrated when things were good. I'm getting a little off topic here, but I got a comment on that video which said, okay, toxic masculinity is hyper aggression and violence and trying to be, you know, alpha and the best at everything, and emotions are for girls and friendships are for girls and, you know, whatever. If there's such a thing as toxic masculinity, then is there such a thing as toxic femininity? Yeah, it's Marguerite.
She doesn't want you to go.
The quintessential example of toxic femininity, because she's so sweet and nice and lovely to your face if she thinks that you can give her something, but behind your back she is scheming and lying about you and spreading rumors. Another example would be Regina George from Mean Girls. You don't actually have to be blonde, but these two examples are. Maybe the goth girl in Mean Girls, because, you know, one of the themes of Mean Girls is that actually quite a lot of the girls are mean girls, even if Regina George is just the best at it. But yes, gossip, backstabbing, thinking of other women as competition. I would also posit that toxic femininity thinks of men as hapless idiots who will do anything for you because boobs, I guess? If you are of the opinion that it's a battle of the sexes, regardless of what sex you actually are, you're probably going to have a bad time in relationships because you view them as fundamentally antagonistic. And so having given us the 1-2 punch of Rodmilla and Marguerite, both fantastic examples of toxic femininity, if you want to call it that, I really love that that's kind of the secondary plot, because the first primary plot of Ever After is obviously Henry and Danielle fall in love and learn things about themselves and each other and whatever, but Danielle learning to deal with her family is definitely plot number 2, and they are entwined, because this movie is well written. But you get these two things. And I also like that while Rodmilla and Marguerite don't really change over the course of the film, Jacqueline does, and Jacqueline's relationship with Danielle also changes over the course of the film, because she recognizes that her sister and her mother, they're not good people, and she doesn't want to be like them. And in addition to the Jacqueline and Danielle start to understand each other better, the main focus of the film, as I said, is that Henry and Danielle are falling in love. And the main way that that happens is that they start to understand each other better. And one of the reasons that that happens, and that we believe it, I think, is that they seek to understand as well as to be understood. For example, this meeting...
I should leave walking on water to the Son of God. Fortunately, I tripped over an angel.
Comtesse!
In which we have, oh no, please, wear my big cloak, and no, don't carry that, I'll carry that, has them getting into it on the topic of whether servants have feelings, I guess. And the passion of the argument pitches up, although quite gradually, until...
How do you do it?
What?
Live each day with this kind of passion. Don't you find it exhausting?
Only when I'm around you. Why do you like to irritate me so?
Why do you rise to the occasion?
It works because they're frustrated, but they're not openly antagonistic. They are seeking to understand and to be understood, and they like each other, and so they're not trying to be hostile. And so they just end up awkwardly giggling like schoolchildren. And it's having an effect on both of them, which you see in the next scene at the dinner table. You get the candlesticks comment so that we can talk about thieves being shipped off to the Americas, and then we learn from Jacqueline that actually Prince Henry said that all of them had to go free, and that anyone who has to sail to the Americas must be compensated.
Well, you gave one man back his life, but did you even glance at the others?
I mean, only after you encouraged him to look, but better that he's doing it now than never. There follows the hilarious tennis match, etc. But to come back to the relationships between the women, which are the secondary main plot. We have one of the scenes where I hope you will agree that we get a really nuanced evil stepmother, because it is undeniable that she is not a nice person. But on the other hand, you can kind of see from this scene how she got to be the way that she is. And while that doesn't excuse it, it's more interesting to be able to understand it. This whole scene is perfect. I have no notes, because you would think that Danielle should know better at this point, that her stepmother doesn't love her and never has and never will, but she keeps trying because hope springs eternal. Maybe this time she will do something that will make Rodmilla happy with her. There is so much 90s mascara on Rodmilla, but I forgive this movie all of its anachronisms, even the body glitter, because, I mean, I guess with the body glitter you could maybe do something similar with mica. You know, it's Leonardo da Vinci. He knows all the tricks.
I go away. I'm tired.
Oh, it's so good. I also really love the historical references. Leonardo da Vinci was, in fact, artist-in-residence at King Francis's court. I mean, not at the same time that the Edict of Fontainebleau was issued, but that's not really the point. And Francis really did issue a religious edict, but when I looked it up, it's basically banning Protestantism, so yeah.
The Franciscans have an astonishing library. Since you are so fond of reading, I thought perhaps you might join me.
It's not fair, sire. You have found my weakness, but I have yet to learn yours.
Well, I should think it was quite obvious.
Be still my heart. That has nothing to do with historical references, but let us take a moment to acknowledge that people are having feelings in sincere ways, and it's very adorable. After books, scheming, and carriage troubles, there is, in fact, sword fighting.
No, it's you again.
Stay aloft, madam. There are games afoot.
You can't really see a lot of the sword fighting, to be fair. It's rapier and dagger fighting, but a very stagey style, because rapiers, they're pokey. Pokety-poke. It's a pokey kind of weapon. Cutting, however, does look more dramatic, so, you know. They are so close together here. Anyway, there are a couple of very workable phrases in this sword fight, but really, we're not supposed to be paying much attention to it. I'm not entirely clear on what that was meant to do, Henry. I'm not sure you knew what it was doing either. It's just here providing some danger and excitement. Danielle, meanwhile, is sensibly trying not to get in the way of two men with two sharp blades apiece. She's trying to get her dress back, and she even goes for the sword, but it does not work out. And I have to say that for all this movie is generally very logical, Danielle rolling an absolute natural 20 on her persuasion check here is, it's a moment.
I insist you return my things at once. And since you deprive me of my escort, I demand a horse as well.
I mean, yes, Gustave does say you have to play the part, but boy, even Henry is impressed with your audacity here. Never mind, this is one of the moments where we let plausibility go by the wayside so we can have a Siege of Weinsberg reference. The Siege of Weinsberg, so the story goes, happens in 1140. King Conrad III lays siege to the city and beats everyone soundly, and then says to the ladies, listen, the castle is ours, but you can leave, we're not going to kill you. You can leave only with the things that you can carry on your backs. At which point the ladies of Weinsberg look at each other and go, huh, pick up their husbands, their sons, and their brothers, and depart. The story continues that the Duke of wherever is not very happy with this, but King Conrad says, no, I'm the king, and I said that they could leave with whatever they carry on their backs, and that's exactly what they're doing, so crack on, ladies. And this moment in itself is also a callback to earlier in the film, in this scene with Rodmilla.
No wonder you're built for hard labour.
It all fits together, and now Henry and Danielle are out late and playing rock, paper, scissors and drinking and spilling secrets. I note that she never actually gets her dress back, and so she ends up wearing this weird concoction of things and seems oddly comfortable with the fact that she's basically running around half-dressed, and no one seems to comment on it. Anyway, during the rock, paper, scissors scene, which obviously is a callback to this, we get a repetition of the "you were born to privilege" line, which is first said by Queen Marie. Obviously, it's a lot easier to take it when it's from a pretty lady than when it's from your mum. Henry is so happy, Danielle is so hungover, and so this leads to a truly deeply viscerally satisfying moment in the film, although there are many, but this one is violent, so you know I have to mention it. The absolute satisfaction of Danielle punching Marguerite in the face, because we all know she deserves it, then means that when she loses Utopia, it's even more of a blow. But at least we do now know that Jacqueline is on the side of the righteous for realsies. That scene begins our slide downwards to the worst moment in the movie, and we continue with Rodmilla figuring out who the Comtesse de Lancret is.
There was a bee.
Lol. We have Danielle trying to tell the truth to or break up with Henry. It doesn't quite work out, and now we're off to the climax.
What bothers you more, stepmother, that I am common or that I am competition?
Yes, girl, you tell her. But still, events are eventuating. It is just going to get worse from here.
Mother, it's only a ball.
Yes, and you're only going for the food.
We've been sliding down and down it, but it takes us up again for a moment while we have the intervention and the fairy godmother sort of...
Why, that was pure genius!
Yes, I shall go down in history as the man who opened a door.
And the glitter and the dress. And can I just add that Jacqueline and the captain of the guard, totally adorable? But really, the moment we are all waiting for is this one.
Breathe. Just breathe.
It's something I say to myself on a semi-regular basis.
God, give me strength.
I also say that on a semi-regular basis, but probably not because of Danielle. The phrase breathe, just breathe is as anachronistic as the makeup, but you know what? We love it. As Danielle arrives at the ball and everything's wonderful for a moment, and then it all comes crashing down as the truth is revealed, and yeah, she's been trying to tell you this for some time now, and it's not really been going very well, and oh dear.
I have been born to privilege, and with that comes specific obligations.
Horse.
You are allowed very few bad words in a PG-rated movie, and I kind of love that they gave nearly all of them to Leonardo da Vinci and the rest of them to Marguerite. It's just perfect.
I will not yield!
And oh, Henry. I mean, to be fair, he has just been blindsided in the most public way possible. He's probably feeling quite embarrassed right now, and betrayed, and, you know, he has been lied to consistently. That's not nice. People don't like that. That's bad. He does need a minute to calm down. And when I say a minute, I mean until the time of the wedding with the Spanish princess. This is the movie's lowest moment, and you feel it, and they let you sit with it, and you get some really beautifully constructed shots while you sit in your misery, and Danielle has rain pouring all over her. But just when you think it can't get worse, we continue the cascading disasters with Rodmilla revealing that, in fact, Danielle has been sold to Monsieur Le Pew. It has just gone from bad to worse, and they let us slide down there and feel those feelings that the characters are feeling. It isn't immediately resolved, everyone we love is in a bad spot, and what's going to happen, we don't know. But because it gets so bad, when it starts to get better, it's just that much more satisfying. And the tipping point is when Henry goes to his wedding with the Spanish princess. And it turns out that she's not that keen on the idea either. They do so much with dialogue in this film, but I love how they just have him laugh at this moment. You can see it when he just gets it. Danielle, meanwhile, may be in the pits of despair, but you know what? She's doing what she can.
My father was an expert swordsman, monsieur. He taught me well. Now hand me that key, or I swear on his grave I will slit you from navel to nose.
Yes! If the fact that Danielle threatens this guy with rapier and dagger is a surprise to you, then I would say maybe you have not been paying terribly close attention to the film. The very first thing we see her do in her first scene is go and fight her best friend. When Henry gets into a fight in the middle of the forest, she climbs down from the tree and assaults this guy from above. And then she goes for a sword. We know what a close relationship she had with her father, so it's entirely believable that we just haven't seen the fact that he taught her how to use a sword. However, whether he did or not is really irrelevant at this moment. I would not cross her because she has murder in her eyes. Like, she is done. She's done taking this. We are leaving. And we continue the satisfying moments cascade with this fantastic anti-climax.
Hello.
Hello.
What are you doing here?
I mean, he's here to rescue you, and it does turn out that you have temporarily resolved that, but to be fair, I don't know what your plan was past this point, because you have no money and no way of getting out of here. Were you going to steal a horse, maybe? I don't know. Look, I don't know what your plan was. Maybe it's best not to ask questions like that. The point is, they come together and we get it all out in the open, and I love this entire scene, not just because I'm a sap, though I am, but because it manages to be sincere and honest and heartfelt without sounding wrong. Like, the language just sounds correct for the slightly anachronistic but still kind of old-timey feeling that they're going for.
Actually, I came to beg your forgiveness. I offered you the world, and at the first test of honor, I betrayed your trust. Please, Danielle.
It's so articulate, but it's so honest and sincere that... my heart. Also, I love the fact that her hands are just filthy. I love that they actually let her have these two distinct looks that we'll come to in a second, but when she's dressed as servant Danielle, she basically only has one outfit, and she's always smudged and messy and dirty unless she is, you know, serving the dinner, so she has to clean her hands. He does not care, though. He does not care. This is the first time he's seen her dressed as a peasant since she hit him in the face with an apple, and does he care? Does he notice? No. Doesn't matter. And then we get even more satisfaction, and coming off the heels of this really sweet romantic resolution, the stepsister and Rodmilla getting what's coming to them is just...
Baroness, did you, or did you not, lie to Her Majesty the Queen of France?
And I suppose that this court scene is probably a good moment to mention the costumes, which are iconic. I mean, are they historically accurate to the period? No, I don't think so. Rodmilla's and the Queen's sort of go more in that direction, I think, but everything else is just kind of old-timey rather than being specific to the time period in which it's meant to be set. But nonetheless, the movie makes great use of costuming to tell us about the characters. Danielle the servant only has one outfit.
Well, Henry loves blue.
Danielle borrowing a bunch of gowns to be the Comtesse de Lancret is amazing, but they always look nice, but they never look as good on her as either her dress when she is the princess or her dress when she goes to the ball. But my personal opinion is that this is her best outfit because it is her as her truest, slightly posh self. It's not her mother's dress. It's not a dress that she borrowed from Marguerite or Jacqueline. It is a dress that she presumably chose herself. And look, she is wearing that thing that Marguerite pretended that the Queen had forgotten, that that guy stole. You see, it all comes together. I didn't even mention that. And also I really like red. And it contrasts very well with Rodmilla, who often wears green. And this script is already too long. But yes, we cascade up through the winds at the end. And it's fantastic. We go from the Spanish princess and Henry realizing that she doesn't want to marry him and he doesn't want to marry her, so what are they even doing here? To him rescuing Danielle, except she's already rescued herself, at least partially, to this scene. This whole scene is spectacular, and I keep saying that, but honestly, it is. And of course, Marguerite and Rodmilla turn on each other.
Your Majesty, like you, I am just a victim here. She has lied to us both, and I am ashamed to call her family.
How dare you turn on me, you little ingrate!
You see what I have to put up with?
Silence, both of you! Good Lord. Are they always like this?
Worse, Your Majesty.
They are toxic. It is the toxic... You see, it all comes together. It all comes together.
Jacqueline, darling, I'd hate to think you had anything to do with this.
Of course not, Mother. I'm only here for the food.
Marguerite, I don't believe you've met my wife.
Yes, that's what we like. The self-control of Rodmilla in this moment, though, because she knows that she could die. She could die right now. You gotta hand it to her. She doesn't panic. And while justice is served, it is fitting and not punitive. But it's still funny. This scene is also why I owned gold eyeshadow as a teenager. I didn't wear it very much, but it was aspirational. Aspirational gold eyeshadow. I wanted to be like this. Anyway, we get the wrap up with the painting.
I must say, Leonardo, for a man of your talents, it doesn't look a thing like her.
And the point is not that they lived happily ever after, though they did. Oh.
The point, gentlemen, is that they live.
I'm sorry, this script kind of devolved over the course of the video into I don't even know where we are or what we're doing right now, but I hope that you enjoyed it anyway. And I would very much like recommendations of films which feel like this. You know, they're fun and they're sharp and they're well written, but they're also sincere and nice and have people in them that you like. Two of my other go-to comfort movies, which this one certainly is, are The Mask of Zorro from 1998 and A Muppet Christmas Carol from 1992, so make of that what you will. Truly, I could no sooner choose a favourite star in the heavens than pick a favourite line from this film, so if you have one, and I have left it out because I did have to cut some of the ones that I had put in, you know, in my first draft, do let me know. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. Don't forget you can go and sign up to Patreon for free to watch the front of this video where I rant extensively, and I will see you all next time.